what do you think will be the legacy of Sharon at home, and how will that differ with the reputation that he has earned abroad, where there's been very split opinion as to whether he was a hero, and some people would go completely in the opposite direction, saying that he did nothing to encourage the peace process, but in fact countered it?
Well, absolutely, and that's very astute on your part, James, of course, posing that question, which is the perception and the legacy. The legacy at home would be one of great support, I would say. The legacy at home in Israel, among Israelis, again, decorated military hero, and they do view him as a hero, as a trailblazer. He was a trailblazer militarily, winning campaigns, daring to do things and that other military leaders perhaps would not do, other military figures. And the main historical time that people bring up is 1973, crossing the Suez Canal, which he dared to do that in the Israeli military campaign then. On the flip side, abroad, certainly among the Palestinians, within the Palestinian sector, he will not be viewed as a trailblazer or a hero. The view is that he has blood on his hands. The view is that he was responsible for hundreds of deaths in Lebanon, that he was responsible for settlement. Now, he backed away from that years later, but he was responsible for a Palestinian uprising, and that he was a fierce military leader who perhaps even masterminded the death of former Palestinian President Yasser Arafat. So again, mixed perceptions, perhaps legacy of a hero among Israelis, and perhaps among those abroad and within the Palestinian sector, not sharing that sentiment at all.
Stephanie, you mentioned there George W. Bush in the context that we could expect to see world dignitaries coming to Israel in the coming days, it seems, if the state decides to go ahead with a public funeral, as would seem appropriate, of course. But George W. Bush aside, when we think of Ariel Sharon's leadership in office and the context of that time, many of those figures are actually still in some kind of position of influence or still in office. Vladimir Putin, of course, in Russia, still here, and of course the Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas. My question to you is this, that if he did not suffer that stroke 8 years ago, how different would the dynamics in the Middle East, and especially in the peace process, be today? Would there have been a positive window of opportunity, or would we not even have figures like John Kerry, as he was last week, coming to Israel? Because would that process have been completely derailed had Sharon still been alive and in office?
Well, of course, James, in the world of supposition, it's impossible to know. The cards play out as they do, how they would have played out. But it's interesting that you do note that, because now in a discussion with someone, just an hour before the former prime minister, his passing was announced, this person said that he believed, and he had been very heavy into the political scene, he believed that had Ariel Sharon not gone into the coma, that there would possibly be a peace deal with the Palestinians, and that on the heels of Ariel Sharon's willingness to pull settlers out of settlements, to disengage from Gaza. And his feeling was that Ariel Sharon could have been the person, ironically, who could have been the middleman to peace, or the blazing the trail to peace. Of course, now it's impossible to know. He did go into a coma, and now, of course, he has passed. But this is the sentiment among some who maybe held him felt that reviled in vis-a-vis Ariel Sharon and his history vis-a-vis Lebanon and the Palestinians, and that somehow he redeemed himself at the end when he did spearhead the disengagement from Gaza, and that perhaps he would have been the one to be able to bridge that gap.
Stephanie Fried over in Tel Aviv. We're going to be back with you, Stephanie, a little bit later, as we here in Beijing report the death of Israel's former Prime Minister Ariel Sharon at the age of 85.